Okay, so where do we start? Well, fear and anxiety, I think that's why we're all here, has been something that also has been a personal friend of mine, I would say. And it certainly has been accompanying me since my childhood, which was probably one of the many reasons why at some point I switched careers from being in medicine and cardiology and molecular biology and just focusing on helping people to overcome their challenges with their emotions. Now, it's not about overcoming the emotions because the emotions have reasons to be here. The emotions are in many ways, helpful, and they're guiding you, and they are catalysts to grow. It's all of those wonderful things, but we just don't necessarily know what to do with our emotions. So today, and this was actually kind of a spontaneous decision, today at the beginning of the year, I would just like to give you an opportunity to change your mind a little bit about fear and anxiety and to learn a little bit more about yourself and your emotions and how to engage with them, how to understand them, and also how to respond to them in a much more empowering way than you may have felt in the past. Now, have you ever seen a fly that's bumping against the window? Now, I love all animals, flies, spiders, you name it, cats, dogs, of course. If you see a fly bumping against the window and you just open the window, one side of it, and want to let it out, and it just doesn't find the way out. It just keeps on hitting its little head against the glass, thinking this way it can eventually get through it. Well, it doesn't really, right? So in some ways, that is what happens when we are dealing with fear and anxiety. How often do we actually hit our little heads against that wall of fear and anxiety? How often are we looking for some way through it, to just break through it, and we don't find really the answer, or we don't find the solution? And today, maybe as you are shifting a little bit, I often wonder, why does the fly not just sit, stop, and maybe reflect a little bit? Maybe look across the shoulders and trying to figure out, well, is there another way? Well, maybe today this is going to be you who going to stop, reflect, and maybe even befriend yourself with your emotions so that there is another way to deal with fear and anxiety, another way to understand fear and anxiety than in the past. So when we are looking at fear and anxiety, the first question, of course, you want to ask yourself, and why does it not move? Here we go. It doesn't move because, here we go. What are fear and anxiety? Now, fear and anxiety are normal emotions which are here to protect us. You may actually know that, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't feel like it, because often fear and anxiety may feel like more an entity that attacks you, something that just comes out of the blue and makes you feel bad. Fear and anxiety can be things that you may feel have nothing to do with you. They are a problem, a flaw, a disorder, and you don't certainly see them as something normal or something that is a part of you. Well, it is. And usually fear and anxiety have a message for you, a message we need to decipher. Now, fear and anxiety, I believe, is something that in some ways is like a sensation similar to pain. Now, when you do have pain, you obviously don't think like, well, I have pain, so, I'm just going to either ignore the pain, get mad at the pain, or take just painkillers. When you have pain for a longer time, you wonder where it comes from. What's the pain about? What has caused the pain in the first place? And that is what fear and anxiety also are in many ways. They are symptoms. They're not the problem. They're just symptoms that tell you that there is something else going on that you may want to pay attention to. Now, in many ways, we are blaming other external circumstances for fear and anxiety. Often we are saying, well, if I have maybe a nicer spouse, then I wouldn't be anxious. Or we are saying, well, if I had more money, then I wouldn't be so stressed. Or we are maybe blaming right now the government on our fear and anxiety. So we're looking externally, and we're looking for the external reason why we are stressed out, why we are anxious, why we are afraid. And the problem is that, of course, we cannot really control the external circumstances we are in. So in order to overcome fear and anxiety, to heal the relationship with fear and anxiety, we need to also take responsibility for it. We need to understand that we do create these emotions. And because we create them, the good news is there is also a way to uncreate them. So I would like you just to close your eyes for a moment. Just allow yourself to nicely take a deep breath in. And then exhale. And again, inhale and exhale. And then I would like you just for a moment to think about something very pleasant. Maybe a situation where, you had around Christmas, around the holidays, something very positive happening. Think about some laughter you had. Think about maybe some touching moments, something that really lifts you up, that makes you feel good. And notice when you're moving this memory from your head to your heart, how it feels. You may feel like, wow, there's an openness. Maybe you feel lighter. Maybe there is really like a warmth that flows through your system. Maybe there is just also a little smile on your face. And then take another deep breath in and exhale. And then think about something that scares you. Maybe the last time you felt anxious, last time you felt stressed. Think about a situation that every time you feel fear and anxiety. And then also notice how that shifts instantaneously, not only your thoughts, but also your physiology. You may feel the effects of the stress hormones that are right now rushing through your system. You may feel more heavy, tense. Maybe your shoulders are somehow more slouching forward. Your face looks more serious. Just notice how that overall feels. And then deep breath in, exhale, and open your eyes. So what did this little exercise show you? Well, it shows you that you can, at will, create your emotions. In some ways, emotions are a body. In Kundalini Yoga, we talked about the 10 bodies, and one of the bodies is the mind. And if you see the mind as a body, then you could say that the emotions are the limbs of that body. They are the extensions of that body. And some of those extensions are the good emotions, the positive emotions that we call them. And some of them are the so-called negative emotions, but all of them have a purpose. I mean, your nose is not negative and your toe is not more important than your butt. Everything has a purpose in your physical body, and so also do have those emotional extensions of your mind a certain purpose. We just need to practice a little bit more on how can we use these different extensions of our mind in ways that they work together and not just basically get us out of balance, which often happens when we are dealing with fear and anxiety. Now, let's look at fear and anxiety, how we create it. You just noticed I can do it. I can shift from feeling content or happy to feeling anxious and scared to somehow I do it. I just don't really know how I do it. Well, let's have a look. So let's see, here is an example. There is a letter in your mailbox, and it's a letter that you probably may think bears bad news. Maybe it's a bill that you have been dreading for a long time. Well, what happens? Now, as you are seeing the envelope, and you don't even necessarily open the envelope, what you feel inside about the envelope happens without you even knowing the content of it. And so what you see is, for example, that internally there may be a conflict between opening up or just avoiding it and putting it to the stack of all the other unopened mail. Then there may be an emotional baggage that feels like, oh, again, it feels so heavy, it feels so overwhelming, because there may be a long stretch all the way back to your childhood where bills and lack of money and all of those kind of things may have scared you. And then there are those limiting beliefs that may say, I never have enough. Or those beliefs that say, oh yeah, the shoe gonna drop, something bad's gonna happen. Or the belief that may say, well, if I don't have enough money, I'm not a good person. I'm not really valuable. And those beliefs, all of them, are bringing up negative thoughts that are just spiraling maybe out of control. Some behaviors, like I said, maybe you're just avoiding it, or you're rushing to the computer and looking how much money you have left before you even know what the bill says. All of those things are creating a distortion of your reality. They make something bigger, they make something more overwhelming, and they make you feel smaller than the circumstances you're in. And as a consequence, then, you basically feel broke, you feel anxious, you feel overwhelmed, you feel all those terrible things because you do in that moment think, well, the world gonna end. Well, is that true? Of course, it's not true. But that is what the subconscious does. And these are the subconscious filters that are distorting our reality, that make our reality often a horror story and not necessarily something that we can manage. So in order to overcome fear and anxiety, we have to address those filters. We have to change all of those root causes, which I will come to in a moment, the inner conflicts, the emotional baggage, the limiting beliefs. All of those things are really important to change in order for us to really heal fear and anxiety. All right, so fear and anxiety, I said before, is a little bit like a wound. A wound, or the pain that is pointing to a wound. Let's say, as an analogy, you have pain in your knee. Your knee hurts, and you just feel like, well, I cannot really walk. So you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you, well, okay, so you have arthritis in your knee, and this has to do with your maybe working out too hard, and you have some extra pounds. Or maybe you haven't done any workout, you haven't done any stretching, and you have some extra pounds. And so the doctor will give you some anti-inflammatory and probably tell you, go into a little diet and do a little bit more stretching, physical therapy, workout, all of those kind of things. We may have all had similar situations happening. Well, in some ways, the approach to overcoming fear and anxiety is very similar. And it is when you're looking at, and again, I have to click on this, you need to resolve the root causes. So this is the wound, or this is the inflammation. This is what really causes the pain of the fear and anxiety in the first place. Then you have to replace that, what triggers your anxiety, the anxiety patterns. Again, this is all about taking responsibility. This is all about understanding we are creating our emotions, and we can learn to uncreate them. And the third thing is to build a new foundation of feeling more calm, feeling more confident, and also feeling more trusting, maybe in yourself, and also life, the universe, God, whatever you feel inclined to believe in and connect to. So I would like today to give you a little bit of a feel of all three of those different aspects. This is, again, a three-pronged approach. So let's start with the root causes so that we can outgrow fear and anxiety. Now, I love this little cartoon, it says this could be the discovery of the century, this little pyramid, depending, of course, on how far down it goes. Now, when we go into the subconscious, we need to go deeper than just our intellectual analysis. You know, a lot of people feel like, well, you know, I left the past behind. It's fine. It's happened. I don't want to think about it. But then they notice, well, maybe they have still the same feelings that they had when they were little. You know, let's say, for example, you got bullied as a child and you don't want to think about the bullies. You don't want to think about the sibling or these kids at school. So you just put it out of your mind. But then at work, there is a person who may have similar tendencies, who's unfriendly, who puts you down. And all of a sudden, you feel like a 10-year-old. All of a sudden, you don't know what to say. All of a sudden, you don't want to go to work just like you didn't want to go to school. All of a sudden, you just go into these different behaviors like avoidance or maybe trying to please that person to not get hurt. And that shows you that there is still something from your past that is working through you. There is still something that isn't resolved. And let's look at these root causes and see if you can also relate to them. So, the emotional baggage. Again, take a moment and go inside. Close your eyes for a moment. Sit still and let your mind simply drift for a moment to a place where you would say you can remember an early time where you felt anxious. Maybe there was a time when you were just 5 years old and your parents were fighting. Maybe there was a time when you were bullied or there was something that you did and you were afraid of getting punished. Maybe there was something where you watched someone getting punished and that scared you. Maybe a brother or a sister, whatever it is, allow yourself to go back in time to something that you know was scary in your childhood and put yourself into the shoes of the person that you were at that time. Allow yourself simply to feel what that was like, how that felt. And then notice if you, when you go back there and you're looking through the eyes of that child, can really still feel your body changing. As I said, maybe there is more tension or weight. Maybe there is a sense of uneasiness inside of you. Or maybe you can also notice that you can feel the room you're in, or you can still hear the sound outside the door. If anything like this still triggers an emotion inside of you, there is still a physical sensation inside of you that is similar to what you felt at that time. That tells you that this baggage is still inside of you. When we have, and you can open your eyes, when we have resolved the past, we can remember it, but we don't feel anything about it. We can go back, but we feel somehow neutral. Maybe we feel resolved because we understood what really was this all about. But when you go back in time and you do feel actually a charge, you feel your body, your physiology changing, then you also know, okay, there is still something that's working inside of me. There is still baggage that I'm dealing with. And the problem with emotional baggage is it's like the bathtub, right? So when the bathtub is pretty full and you add 1 or 2 drops, it's easily overflowing. Same thing with fear and anxiety. If you do have a lot of old fear and anxiety inside of you, well, chances are that just a little bit extra may be enough for you to go into another bout of anxiety, like a tidal wave that is just washing over you. So the past can haunt you. And the good news is you can resolve the past and you can learn from the past, especially when you're working with the subconscious. Root cause that you might want to look at is the inner conflict. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly have been battling with myself for a long time. When I grew up, I was a happy-go-lucky child. I really didn't care. I was just wanting to play, look at the clouds, and was just fascinated with life. It wasn't serious. It wasn't really about goal setting. It was about just having fun. Well, and then, unfortunately, I had to go to high school. I barely made it because somehow I didn't really study or prepare, and we had to do tests in order to get to high school. Not everyone could get to high school in Germany. So I made it to high school, and then my parents shifted away from letting me just be to putting a little pressure on me. A little is maybe an understatement. Well, they just told me, well, you're a late bloomer. You really have to work hard. And in the back of their minds, they probably thought you're not that smart. So we just have to nudge him and maybe kick him at sometimes to really make him succeed. Because after all, they were doctors and they were very certain that I should be a doctor as well. Well, that created a lot of anxiety inside of me because then, of course, I felt I'm only loved, I'm only accepted, I'm only really wanted if I have good grades. And for years as a child, I couldn't sleep before a test. I tried everything. My parents gave me medication, and the best sleeping pill was a big fat cat that I took to bed. And when this cat was starting to purr, I finally could also fall asleep. But for years, I was in that conflict. The conflict of not wanting to always go for the next goal, not wanting to overachieve and just basically never find rest and play a little bit. And at the same time, having this drive inside of me, no, you have to prove yourself. You have to always meet expectations. And that created a lot of friction inside of me. And that is only one example where an inner conflict can in self create a lot of fear and anxiety. You may have something similar, a very driven and ambitious aspect, and a side of you that is rather maybe anxious and wants to stay in bed and avoid. Maybe there is a conflict inside of you between a part of you that really wants to take care of yourself and just do things that you want to do and are fun. And another part of you that feels like, no, you have to first be there for others. You have to please them. You have to make sure that they are okay. You have to make sure that you are liked and approved of by them. And so you always put all the energy in them, and there's nothing left for you. Again, this can create a huge conflict inside of you. Another conflict is that feeling of wanting to be in a relationship, wanting to be loved, wanting to be connected to someone, and then being scared to be hurt again, scared to be disappointed, scared to be rejected. And so these patterns of going in a relationship and then finding all the faults or acting in some ways pretty, unpleasantly, so that you are creating this self-fulfilling prophecy where the person just says, well, I don't think this is working out. And then you are, again, confirmed in your belief that no one loves you anyhow. These are all signs of inner conflicts. And inner conflicts are literally two aspects of your subconscious mind. It's almost like two little people inside of your head that are trying to pull you in two different directions. And you, the conscious person in the middle, often you don't really know what to do. You just feel like, oh, so exhausting being me because I really don't know which way to go and who I am in the first place. And again, this is something that you can resolve. This is something where you can learn to have an inner communication and a relationship with both sides of you that allows them to support each other and help them to ultimately reach a higher goal, a higher purpose than just keeping you safe. Now, the third root cause is the root cause of that limiting core beliefs. Now, what I would like you to do, and I hope you have a pen and paper, if not, just type it in your phone or grab one. I would like you just to write down 3 thoughts that usually trigger your anxiety. I would like you just to think about, when do I feel anxious? And then write down 3 thoughts that create that anxiety. Maybe a thought about, what other people are thinking, or maybe a thought that says, what if this or that happens? Or a negative thought can be also some thought about yourself, where you beat yourself up and feel like, ugh, I did this wrong, or I will never really reach my goals. Or write down 3 of those thoughts. What you can learn from those thoughts are 2 things. One is, what is actually the belief that causes this thought to be there in the first place? For example, when you're beating yourself up, is there a general belief of you not being good enough? You just not being, not measuring up? If you feel like in your thoughts, it's often about other people, how they may, not call you or not care about you, is there a belief that you just don't matter? Or if there is a thought about nuclear war with North Korea that is just keeping you awake at night, or maybe getting bankrupt, or maybe a thought about something happening to a loved one, again, completely without any reality in the, as a reason to feel this, but just a thought that tortures you. That could be also a belief of not being safe, a belief that the shoe gonna drop, something bad's gonna happen. And when you think about those thoughts, and I invite you to collect those thoughts, really for a week, write down 3 times a day your negative thoughts and notice what is actually the belief. The thoughts are almost like little branches of a tree. And when you really follow those branches down to the roots, you can see, wow, there is a very strong core belief, an identity on how I see the world and how I see myself. And that, again, is often just a very distorted and limited version of who you are and the world you're in. Now, once you know the limiting belief, you can also go back and see, where does this belief come from? And in my case, it was about the fear of failure and that feeling of having to prove yourself and always feeling like somehow it's not enough. Well, I know where that comes from. There are these, situations and events of the past and the beliefs that came from those events. But maybe for you, there is a poverty consciousness, or there is a fear of loss. Where does it come from? Does it come from a certain kind of a conditional acceptance that only when you were accomplishing something or made money, then you were really acceptable? Or was there a thought that you're really never safe because your whole environment that you grew up in was completely unpredictable, chaotic, and you never really felt safe in? Now, when you have all of those 3 things, you have the emotional baggage, you have the inner conflicts resolved, you have the limiting core beliefs eliminated and replaced, what's going to happen is that you have a clean slate. And a clean slate means literally you no longer act from your childhood pattern. You no longer have a little child inside of you run your life. And we come to that later on today, that there is really a younger part inside of us that often just says, okay, abort, red alert, I'll take over, let's go into survival mode. And once you have addressed what caused that survival mode, what caused the fear and anxiety patterns in the first place, that is no longer the case. You are then the adult who can choose. You can choose how you want to see something. You can be the fly in the window who can sit still and look around and choose a solution, choose an opening without freaking out. And that's the gift of addressing these subconscious root causes. The reason why I'm saying this is I want to make sure that you know there is a reason and there is a solution. So many people feel frustrated, angry, and also desperate and hopeless about their fear and anxiety issues. And so many people feel like, well, I just have to live with it for the rest of my life. This is who I am. There is nothing I can do. And this is just not the case. There is something you can do, and there is something that you can do to resolve all of those pains that you have been feeling on an emotional level. And that is the first step. Now, the next step is the step that is all about the anxiety patterns. Now, how do we freak ourselves out? Well, these are the anxiety patterns that I find are very common. So there is a negative self-talk. And the negative self-talk is basically the self-talk that is very critical, self-talk that is all about bashing yourself, bashing others. You know, you have to keep in mind that when you are judging others, you also scare yourself. When you are gossiping, that can trigger anxiety. Many people think like, well, I don't have negative self-talk. I'm just really angry when I'm in traffic. Well, guess what? This angry self-talk can also create fear and anxiety. Then another, anxiety pattern is the unhealthy mental diet. And that's something that I find a lot of people don't really realize how the distraction from fear and anxiety can actually cause more fear and anxiety. You know, like you watch TV because you cannot really fall asleep because you're too stressed out. So you say, oh, I'm just going to turn on the TV and maybe watch Walking Dead or something that really is a crime story where someone got just decapitated. And all of this may feel like a distraction, and it may feel like, okay, I don't have to think about my own problems, but for your subconscious, it's all reality. For your subconscious, the zombies exist, the murderer is behind somewhere in a door, and you just have to be aware that your subconscious doesn't necessarily distinguish between what's fiction and what's reality. So try before you go to bed to give your subconscious a break, to nurture your subconscious, maybe with nice music, to nurture your subconscious, maybe with something that feels good, like a reflection on the day. And I'm going to give you some suggestions later on. But don't feed your subconscious with checking your emails and worrying about something, or creating maybe some kind of again, scenario of violence and scaredness by looking at the news or anything outside of you. And then there is a survival pattern that also creates a lot of fear and anxiety, which is the avoidance pattern. Now, how many of you feel that they do avoid a lot? You know, avoid, for example, the being visible with colorful clothes. So all you're doing is just wearing your usual black and white, so that's how you can hide the most. Or how many of you do actually avoid speaking up and having an opinion? Maybe you say, well, I just don't say anything to my spouse or my colleagues because I want to keep the peace. And so you just stay outside of that, what really would make a difference. You stay in that little invisibility comfort zone, feel more miserable, create more a sense of powerlessness. But at the end, you know, feel like that you, at least for now, put a little band-aid on the problem. Now, if you notice that your comfort zone gets smaller, if you notice that you're avoiding more and more, it's not about forcing yourself to do the opposite. Now I'm just going to speak up, and now I'm going to be brave and confront those bullies that always have been bothering me, because that could potentially create even more anxiety inside of you and a greater rift between you and your subconscious. But if you are in an avoidance pattern, gently allow yourself to break beyond it. Gently allow yourself to have a little bit more of just a voice, a little bit more of an expression of self. Another anxiety pattern that I want you just to be aware of is the anxiety pattern of pleasing others and neglecting yourself. It's so common. We wonder sometimes, why do I feel so anxious after the holidays? Well, maybe after the holidays, you realize you have given, you have spent too much money, too much time on others, you have said too many times yes, you have had too many guests over, and you haven't really taken care of yourself. You haven't taken care of anything that makes you feel happy or balanced or feel good. And so you neglected yourself. And that's just one example of many where people just do consistently hurt themselves and create anxiety by not focusing on their own needs, but only focusing on the needs of others. And there is the goal-oriented, the conditional acceptance. And that conditional acceptance is something where I just talked about when it's all about the goals and when it's all about you basically saying, I gonna have to make that amount of money, I have to get this promotion, I have to reach these goals, and you only feel safe and good and relaxed when you have those goals, then you put the solution outside of yourself. Then you're saying conditionally, I can only be at peace if this and this happens. And that's not really how our emotions work. We are creating our reality from the inside out. We are creating peace from the inside out, not from the outside in. There are many situations that may be challenging, many situations that may be difficult. And the more we feel there is peace and confidence and calmness within, the more we can deal with those situations. So try not to postpone focusing on yourself because you have still so much to do in the external world. Try to find peace even if your circumstances are not ideal. And how, we're going to talk about in a moment. But even if you're challenged right now, even if you're looking for a job and you don't know how to pay your bills, even if you're in a relationship that doesn't work very well, even if your kids are struggling and everything right now feels like is against your peace of mind, that's even more a reason to work on yourself and to know that when you change yourself, when you are finding the peace within, when you are that source of confidence and calmness, everything around you will also be different. You will be different in work meetings. You will be different with your family. You will see more solutions because you're going to be calm. And from calmness, you can be creative. You don't get really creative when you're anxious. All of those things have a positive ripple effect. But the first step is on the inside. And then the last anxiety pattern that I don't want to spend too much time is the anxiety pattern of micromanagement, where you simply don't let go of always having to make sure everything is okay. It can be something that you're on the one hand seeing yourself very spiritual and you say, I don't believe in God. And I know there is some support there, but then you're still always checking the door 3 times to make sure it's locked. You always, maybe avoid going out after 10 o'clock because you feel like it's not safe. You always check and overcheck which direction to drive on vacation, drives your spouse totally crazy. All of those micromanaging things basically give you the sense it's all up to you. You cannot trust in anyone else. You cannot trust in life. And it is totally overwhelming because you cannot really control every little aspect, as we just talked about. So if you have that micromanagement pattern and it causes you anxiety, you can also, with all of those patterns, do a little fast. For these patterns to resolve, you have to be willing to let a little bit go, to do something a little bit differently, to get out of this, as I said, comfort zone, and then feed back to yourself, oh, this was actually safe. It actually felt freeing. It felt actually good to not be stuck in that old pattern. And you may feel like more motivated to let go a little bit more and to resolve a little bit more of those patterns. Now, I talked about these two aspects. Now, these are aspects where you could say one is addressing that depth of your anxiety, the other one is addressing the behaviors that cause the anxiety, and both help you to resolve anxiety. Now, guess what? If you resolve something, unfortunately, the mind will automatically say, well, and now what? Because the mind has habits, especially the subconscious likes to do the things it is used to. It likes to do the things that it has been doing for a long time. And so if you are giving your mind now the direction, let's not do this anymore. If you're not telling your mind, let's do something else, the mind says, okay, I cannot just sit there idly, do nothing. It's like saying, I will not think about anything. It's pretty much impossible. So your mind going to just go back to these old patterns of anxiety. It will chew around on anything that you can worry about. So you have to give your mind something else. You have to give your mind something else to do. And for that, you have to have a goal. You have to have a direction. So take your pen and paper for a moment and write down what on the left side, you make a little column. On the left side, you're going to write down 3 things that you feel fear and anxiety do, to you, you could say, where you just feel, okay, because I'm fearful and anxious, I cannot sleep at night, or I'm eating junk food, or I'm not feeling motivated to go out and go on a date, whatever those things are. And then you're going to write on the right side what you want to have instead. What is it what you like to have instead? Ask yourself, is the opposite of fear and anxiety peace? Is the opposite of fear and anxiety control? Is the opposite of fear and anxiety confidence? Or is it trust? Trust in yourself? Is it trust maybe in a higher power? What is it? What is the opposite of fear and anxiety? And what I find is really so empowering about outgrowing fear and anxiety is when we are building a foundation of trust. So why don't you put everything down and take a few moments to inhale and exhale again, and then go into a rhythm of inhaling through the nose, 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhaling on 8 counts if you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can do both through the mouth. You can do inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Just inhaling on 4, exhaling on 8. And all you need to do is just to count. Counting, inhaling, and exhaling. And what you notice when you do just allow your breath to be in control of you, what you notice is that your whole system is just calming down. I had many clients that felt just by being able to control their breath through a very simple breathing routine in the morning, their entire day changed. Their entire experience was different. So it's a very, very beautiful and powerful way to just start the day by going about it and breathing, inhaling on 4, exhaling on 8. Good. Now, this is one way to connect to yourself. And while you are now just stopping this breathing cycle and breathing normally, but have your eyes closed, I would like you to go one step further on what we already talked about and think about anxiety and fear, not just as an emotion, which in some ways is, very obscure. You don't really see emotions. It can be something that's, not really tangible. And therefore, for some of you, it may be hard to relate to. But what if you are right now, as your eyes are closed and you're really focusing on yourself, what if you are imagining your fear and anxiety more as a child that is you, the child that you may have already met before when we went back into your childhood. And you could imagine this child inside of you still looking through its eyes at the world, still scared about the things that you were scared about when you were little. Rejection, the unforeseeable, being not good enough, not fitting in, somehow not belonging, all of those things that may have been there in your childhood, this anxiety representative, this inner child, may still feel. Now, when you're looking at this younger self, and I have to admit, when I saw my younger self the first time in my heart, I didn't really know what to do with him. So you may feel the same way. You may feel, on the one hand, maybe intrigued. On the other hand, you may feel annoyed. On the one hand, you may feel like, I want to help. On the other hand, you may feel like, oh no, I don't know what to do, how to help. But if you can just hold still and connect to that child, imagine that you can be the adult that maybe you have been missing when you grew up. The adult who can rewrite history, who can rewrite the book of life. Because as a child, your book of life may have been conditional love, may have been life is not safe, may have been you have to look after everyone else and can't really take care of yourself. That may have been the marching orders. That may have been your book of life as you grew up. And you as an adult, you can change that. And so when you're looking at this child, imagine as you go through the day that when you have a negative thought that causes you to be anxious, like I talked about, maybe self-critical, maybe what if, maybe a thought that's about others. You're sitting in the bus and you say to yourself, or you hear it in your mind, oh, I'm wondering what these people are thinking. Oh, they probably don't like me, or they probably want to do something to me. And you feel like, okay, this is probably this child inside of my heart talking. How do you want to respond? Do you want to just ignore it, or do you want to actually respond to it? And if you want to respond to it, what do you want to say? You may want to say, you're safe, you're with me, I'll take care of you. You may want to say, it doesn't matter what other people are thinking, because what really matters is that we do feel good about ourselves and that we are at peace with ourselves. You may have a lot of things to say that you would easily say to your own children, or maybe to a friend, or to a beloved. Now it's just time to say that what you know you can see so easily for others, to say those things also for yourself, to that part inside of you that still looks through those distorting filters at yourself and the world. And that is what counterbalancing negative self-talk is all about. If you do this 3 times a day, having a little communication with a little being inside of you that is scared, if you're realizing that all negative self-talk is not about depicting reality, it's not about being accurate. Negative self-talk is simply a question. Am I okay? Is it okay for me to do this or that? Am I safe? Will it be okay? You know, when you really see this more as a question, whatever anxiety triggering thoughts you have, that needs to be answered and that you can answer. And if you answer this question from your heart, not from your head, just not coming up with some rational, well-meant, good sounding, but without any emotional charge, laced thoughts, if you really open your heart and you are compassionate and you are kind, then it's going to sink in to that subconscious level. You're going to feel connected to the source of your anxiety, that inner child, and all of a sudden you will feel that less and less of those thoughts are coming up, and there is greater and greater sense of peace and harmony. So that's a really also wonderful and powerful way of working on building a new foundation that really is about reality now and not the past, a new foundation that is about how you want to be and how you want to see yourself, and not how you were forced in many ways and maybe imprinted or programmed to be and see yourself. So now you can open your eyes again. So that was, for many people, maybe quite eye-opening to know that this little voice inside of you doesn't tell you the truth, but it wants answers. And that this little voice inside of you is not here to torture you or put you down, but it's here to get some kind of a reassurance and guidance and support. Because ultimately, that is, again, this analogy with the mind and the body. In order to get a new foundation, you have to strengthen your mind, just like you would strengthen your body. Give your mind new guidance, stretch it, bend it a little bit in different direction, help it to get stronger, and counterbalancing your self-talk. And also then, as I said before, doing the centering breathing are two very, very powerful things to do. Now, the third thing you can do for yourself to build a new foundation, once you went through the day, is to focus on that what the mind enjoys the most as nutrition. This is what the mind really loves to have, which is some sense of reaffirmation, a sense of approval, a sense of appreciation. Because, the mind really, especially the subconscious, has only two things in mind, which is to keep us safe and to make us happy. So if we're only focusing on safety, of course, that's what the mind continues to do. But if you are telling your mind, well, let's focus on the positive, let's stay centered, let's give ourselves a little fast here when it comes to all this, negative patterns like I described before, and go more into a calmer and more self-empowered way of approaching life. If you, at the end of the day, then put a cherry on the cake by saying, I'm proud of myself, I feel really good, this was a great choice, I didn't really spiral out of control in my thinking, I did actually have a boundary and not just please someone, I was wearing red socks today and not just, hiding myself again and being more unnoticeable. Little things, little steps. If you give yourself a pat on the back, if you're feeling at the end of the day, good job, and see on top of it, it was completely safe, nothing happened, your mind will give you more of this. Your mind says, that's what he or she wants. That's the direction we want to go. And then your mind going to look for more reasons for you to feel good about yourself. And again, that is building that confidence muscle. And then there is the ease muscle, the trust muscle. And again, this is also something that you may or may not relate to. If you have some kind of a spiritual inclination, or if you're just open to believe that there is a flow of well-being in the world, if life on some level is just not random only, but if there are some synergies, coincidences, maybe things that just on some level fit together and feel supportive, pay attention to them. Don't let them just fall by the wayside. Just ask yourself every night, where was life good to me today? What am I grateful for today? How did the universe show up for me today? It can be as little as you finding the parking spot when you need it. Or maybe you found, as you're driving to work and again, you're late, you have found that all the lights were in green and you just made it in time. Or you were thinking about someone and 2 minutes later you ran into this person. Whatever those things are that you feel like, I'm in the flow, I'm moving forward, that can be incredibly powerful, again, to increase your level of calmness and confidence in life, because you're paying attention to that, what actually happened, versus just engaging in this what if world that often will never happen, but really makes you miserable along the way. So, just to summarize, addressing the deeper root causes, making sure that you take responsibility on how you may scare yourself, and then refrain from that, just step by step. And thirdly, really working on building that muscle of trust and confidence, staying in your energy, staying centered, and then reinforcing yourself through positive self-talk, counterbalancing negative self-talk from the heart, addressing this child, and then also, of course, feeling appreciative about yourself and life. All of those three things will help you, guaranteed, to outgrow fear and anxiety. As I said, you just cannot make it an external dependent endeavor. You cannot say, I'm going to work on myself for 5 days, and then everything externally needs to be much different. And if not, then I'm going to go right back to anxiety. You need to focus on your goal is to be confident and at ease, no matter what the circumstances are. And guess what? For many people that I've worked with, their circumstances are changing when they are internally at the place that they have been waiting for to be until those circumstances would change. And then somehow it just happened from the inside out. Great. Now, if you are having any questions, I would be very happy to answer them. Now, I have to say, being 50-something, unfortunately, I need glasses now. So if you have any questions on the chat box, please write them in, and I will be happy to answer them. Let me have a look. These are all about the noise, unfortunately. I'm sorry for that, but I think finally it did get resolved. Now, write something in the chat box. Many people that are dealing with fear and anxiety, often wonder how long it will take, because they are saying, well, I have had it for such many decades. I don't know exactly if it's possible to overcome it. And in some ways, I always talk about the analogy of the firstborn. If you have children, you may have had the experience that, the moment you have your firstborn in your arms, you all of a sudden are a parent. You may still not know what to do, but somehow you have the feeling like, wow, something fundamentally shifted. And that fundamental shift is so sudden and so deep that it really, basically changes your entire identity. And that is possible for anything. That is possible also for changing your identity away from feeling anxious and afraid to feeling confident and at ease. And that can happen quite fast. Very often what I feel like people are experiencing is that they are working on resolving these issues, they are working on creating better habits, and most importantly, they are working on having more compassion with himself. But there is then a moment where all of a sudden the heart opens up. And that sounds maybe trite, but it's true. There is a moment when all of a sudden there is a sense of ease and maybe even self-love, completely replacing these old survival patterns. It's almost like in that moment they're landed inside of themselves. And that for many people happens gradually, and then overnight, it's like a light switch had turned, everything seems different. And so it's an ongoing journey, of course, learning to love, accept, appreciate, and be confident in oneself. I think it's a lifelong journey. And some of you have been on this journey for a long time, and you know it is not a journey that always goes up. There are little hills and valleys. You are dealing with new challenges, maybe with a loss, maybe with a disappointment. But at the end, you also know as you go along the journey, you will have more tools, more confidence in yourself, and a greater sense of, I can deal with anything that comes my way, because you have been on that journey for such a long time. And I always feel that our greatest challenges are our greatest opportunities and our greatest teachers. So don't feel like if you have been working on anxiety and it's coming back, or you feel again that this is a complete disaster, that nothing's going to work, something is totally wrong with you. Just understand this is the hill and valley of the journey. And if there is still, after all your efforts, some fear and anxiety there, well, maybe there is a reason for that. Maybe there is something you haven't addressed. Maybe you have made it too conditionally, or maybe you still haven't completely loved and accepted yourself. Now, here is a question. So when you wake up in the middle of the night and don't know what you are thinking, how can you go back to sleep? Well, that's a very good question, because, often this waking up in the middle of the night can feel like fear and anxiety. Now, if you had a dream that woke you up, like a little nightmare, one thing that I find so effective with these kind of waking up from, or being awakened from a nightmare, is to continue in your mind how you want the scenario to actually play out. So rather than letting the nightmare be that movie that was projected on your subconscious and you can't do anything about it, see it again more as a opportunity to answer a question or create a new version of reality. So if you have been chased, create a movie in your mind, create a resolution of that nightmare where you're completely safe. There is a beautiful hot air balloon, you jump in and you go and fly away, or whatever those things are. You can certainly work with that. Now, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you don't know exactly what it is at all, you just feel maybe uneasy and you don't really have any thoughts, what you can do is just check first in on the emotion. What is the emotion? Are you feeling maybe, ready to go because you have a sense of urgency? Are you feeling there is some worry? Are you feeling there is something that seems like hanging over you like an unresolved issue? Just hone in on the feeling first. And let's say the feeling is more worry. And then you ask yourself, and you let the answers come to you. What am I worried about? What is right now a reason to be worried? So in other words, your emotions that wake you up may first show you more the emotion and not really what triggers the emotion. So you can actually communicate with your emotion and ask, what is it? What the emotion wants to tell me? And you may not always get an answer, but often you will. Often you will all of a sudden have a name or a thought, or you may have an image or a memory coming up, and then you address it. If this is something that you need to counterbalance, if it's something that you need to make a decision about, if it's something that you need just to say, I'm going to let go right now and leave it behind because this is not something I can deal with or need to deal with right now. In the end, it's all about taking the conscious decision on how you want to approach life and how you want to see life. I really believe that the subconscious, where the emotions are coming from, is a wonderful ally, is really an amazing support system, but it needs someone at the helm. It needs someone in the driver's seat. And that's a conscious person. That's a person who says then, okay, I can see that you see the world this way or that you worry about that, but I'm consciously saying right now, it's time to sleep. Right now I'm saying we're going to deal with it all tomorrow, trust me. And right now I'm just doing my breathing, to relax, surrender, and let go. So that's an approach to certainly work with. I want to quickly talk about, some of you may feel like, well, this is great information, but I don't really know exactly the step-by-step processes on how to resolve that, what's, on the deeper level of subconscious causing me anxiety. I don't really have all the tools to get out of these survival patterns like pleasing or avoiding. I don't really know how to counterbalance my negative self-talk. Well, this is why I have this 6-session video seminar created, which is really affordable, and especially right now because it's only $99 until Monday. And it's a 6-session video seminar that leads you from the beginning, from understanding anxiety, from identifying the deeper root causes that you were dealing with, to all the tools and methods and methodologies that allow you to resolve those. So you will be able to resolve those inner conflicts, to release all the anxiety patterns and emotional baggage that you had still buried inside of you. You will be able to overcome also those limiting beliefs and replace them with a much more empowering belief system. All of this will be explained to you, and the nice thing is you can listen and watch the videos over and over and over again. You will every time get some special homework to do, and you can always reach out to me and ask me if you have any questions. In the meantime, you can connect to the other participants through a Facebook page. There's a lot of support, and it's really something that has helped so many people that I'm really pleased and excited for you to have that opportunity. So go to the fearandanxietysolution.com website, and again, until Monday or until Sunday evening, there is a special offer where it's usually $345. Now it's only $99, and you can go through it and start right tomorrow and really work on yourself and on your more subconscious fear and anxiety and how to resolve it. And of course, you can also work with me directly. I do offer individual sessions, and I work with people all over the world via Skype or Zoom or the phone. So if that is something you want to do, I'm very happy to support you. Now, there is another question. I've been told to ask myself, can I look at this differently? Well, yes, I can, but I feel like it doesn't acknowledge my feelings at the time, the anger, the fear. When is it a good tool and not? Well, that's a really nice question. I like this question because can I look at this differently is about, reframing. It's about also the counterbalancing, but that doesn't mean that it's about ignoring your feelings and ignoring the reasons why they are there. For example, if you do have, let's say, anger, you mentioned anger. The anger that you're feeling may be completely right and justifiable. And the anger may tell you, you need to have a boundary. You need to do something differently. This is not right. I deserve better. And that's all really, really empowering. But unless you're taking some approach to respond to the anger will eat you up. And as the Buddhists say, it's going to be the hot coal that you swallow while you are hoping their house is burning down. So you are hurting yourself. So these emotions, like fear, maybe there is some fear and you feel like, I have a right to feel fearful because maybe it's a fear of no longer being loved or feeling rejected. But then again, it's also an encouragement while you have the fear to say, okay, what do I do with this fear? What does the fear really need from me? And rather than looking at the other people that may make you feel rejected or not good enough, it's also a call for you to build your own sense of self and work on your own self-love and be your own authority. In other words, your emotions are absolutely right and valid, but they're catalysts. They are not what we are supposed to live with. They are not what we are supposed to get stuck in. They are supposed to nudge us, to wake us up, to make us aware and alert, and then it's our conscious decision to do something about it. getting stuck in emotions usually, unfortunately, only prolongs them, and it doesn't really help us to grow. Now, I think there was another question. No, there were a lot of thank yous. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess we are almost at the end. I'm going to just give you another chance if you have to ask a question. Otherwise, I am really, really grateful for you sticking with me here while I was going back and forth a little bit with the sound and the slides. And I hope that this webinar left you with a sense of empowerment. I hope it left you with a sense of hope and a sense of encouragement that really fear and anxiety are not the problem. We just need to find a way to understand what actually it tries to tell us, to see it as the pain of the heart, the pain of the soul that just wants a little attention for us to make some changes, some differences in our lives. And those differences can be about just turning inwards, connecting to ourselves more, taking ourselves more seriously, and looking less on the outside. Because isn't that really what right now happens so much in our society, that it's all about how other people perceive us, how many followers we have on Instagram, how much we are fitting into the expectations? Isn't that one of the major reasons why we create so much fear and anxiety inside of us? Because we are no longer connected to ourselves. We are no longer identifying ourselves with our truth, but more trying to find out what we are supposed to be so that other people can approve of us. And that is, for, I believe, a deeper part inside of us, ultimately a betrayal on ourselves. And that what fear and anxiety does is reminds you it's time to focus on yourself. You're off track. You're not in balance. You are outside of yourself. It's time to go inside. So I think, yeah, good question. Is the webinar available again? I will actually post it on the YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is Dr. Friedemann Schaub, or you can just type in Dr. Schaub, Dr. Friedemann Schaub. You can also go to the fearandanxietysolution.com website. There's a link to the YouTube channel, and the webinar will be there. There are also guided meditations there. All of my empowerment radio shows are there. There are other webinars there. I think there are 150 videos, so there's a lot to watch. If you want to binge on overcoming your challenges, that may be a nice thing to do. All right. Well, thank you very much again for this great opportunity to have you today with me to talk about that, what I'm passionate about. And if you have any questions, please also reach out and email me at info@thefearandanxietysolution.com.